Yeah, stay prepared for the up and downs. Life is like a seesaw. Some say it's a bitch, man.
What's going on, guys? Just another critic. Week 5 predictions continued. We're going to be talking about USC and Washington in this one. USC just breaking back into the top 25 at 21. Washington moved up a few spots to 17. Both teams coming into this matchup with a 3-1 record. Washington 3-1 against the spread. USC 2-2 against the spread. Let's go and run over the stats real quickly. USC offense averaging 33 points per game. Defense allowing 24 points per game. Offense looking pretty heavy in the pass attack, averaging 324 passing yards per game with an average of 118 yards on the ground. Back on defense, allowing 250 yards per game and allowing 170 on the ground per game. Turnover differential plus 1.25. So that's always a great thing to have in your back pocket, being very good and being positive on the turnover differential. Looking at Washington statistically, offense averaging 40 points per game, defense allowing 18 points per game. Passing yards, looking at the offense, putting up 270 through the air per game, and then on the ground, they're averaging close to 200 yards on the ground. So a pretty balanced attack statistically. Passing yards allowed per game, 213. Rushing yards allowed per game, 118. And the turnover differential is negative 0.5 right now. And so coming into this game, here's what we know. Let's talk about USC. USC, the run game hasn't really been consistent. Hasn't been as consistent as they'd like it to be. They've pretty much depended on their quarterbacks. Obviously, it started with JT Daniels, who got hurt, ACL, gone for the season. Then going into the Utah matchup, they had Caden Slovis, injured, concussion, and then they brought in, forget the dude's first name, but his last name is Fink, third-string quarterback, and the dude just went off. Pretty much made a ton of big plays. He's got a great deep ball, made a ton of big plays with Michael Pittman. As we already know, USC continuously brings in a solid group of wide receivers on a year-to-year basis, so that's never the issue at USC. And obviously, as you can see, they're averaging close to 350 yards in the air. But Fink, right, with Fink, while he did have a great game, the thing that I didn't see from him was his ability to, put a drive together, put possessions together, to take his team, from whatever it is, the 20-yard line and drive them down, and to see consistency on that offense. Most of the touchdowns came from big plays, right? Michael Pittman, deep ball, number 21 on the other side, catching a deep ball in the end zone. So everything was pretty much big plays, explosive plays that led to touchdowns. So if you look at their time of possession, they really didn't hold the ball for that long. And so I'm not sure that's going to be something that is going to be as dependable when you're going up against Washington. Washington, as we know, has consistently produced some of the best pass defenses throughout the past few years since Chris Peterson has been there, obviously. But they did lose a lot of guys on defense. I think it was almost 80% of that defense from a season ago had graduated or went to the draft. So they lost a lot of experience on that side of the ball. But as we saw, they've been playing pretty well and close enough to that standard that they're typically used to seeing from Washington. And I think a big game plan coming into this game for Washington is going to be obviously to limit the explosive plays. They're probably going to double Michael Pittman and pretty much let Fink have everything he wants underneath. And knowing that, they're going to give him that, and they're going to try and close that space quickly. And so they're probably going to give him the flats. They're going to give him underneath. They're going to give him those short dink and dunk passes. But they're going to have somebody ready to close that space and, give them that 1 to 2 yards of yardage, but essentially making him drive the ball down the field and put together possessions, whether it's 70-yard drives, 60-yard drives, whatever it may be. They just want to challenge him and not give him that easy play and throwing it up to Pittman. Not saying that those guys aren't still going to go out there and make plays for Fink, but that's the type of game plan that I see Washington taking on the defensive side of the ball, limiting those explosive plays and doubling those big wide receivers and doing their best to obviously get to the quarterback and put some pressure on him. Surprisingly enough, Fink had a decent amount of time versus that highly touted Utah defensive line. And the big story that wasn't talked about was USC's defensive line. They were the big story after the game. When coming into the game, it was Utah's D-line. And so if USC's D-line can step up again, right? We know what we've seen with Washington. Obviously, Jacob Eason coming out of Georgia. Lots of hype behind him. Washington themselves, man, they've got a great group of wide receivers, very underrated. They aren't talked about enough, and they're big play guys. They can contort their body. They can make, those acrobatic catches, those one-handed catches. And Jacob Eason has the arm talent. It's just a matter of, as some people say, does he have it above the shoulders? And so when they went up against Cal, he kind of got stifled there, right? And so this is going to be another game where he can prove to, not only himself but the doubters that he's got what it takes to go up against some of the better defenses in the country or in the Pac-12. Obviously, this USC defense didn't exactly face one of the best passing attacks in Utah. They're more of a balanced attack. They like to run the ball. They had Zach Moss, and they like to pound it down their throat, but they had to move towards the passing game because of how fast USC was scoring. And so Washington on the other side, statistically, they look more balanced. But what I think we'll see is a heavy dose of pass attack, because not that they can't run the ball. We've seen that they can. I know their running back was hurt against BYU, so we saw the running game, but not as well as we've seen it in a few of their other games. But I think Washington is a very good team. And like I said, I actually love what the USC defense brings to the table. They've got a lot of young guys, and they're one of my sleeper units coming into the season. A lot of redshirt sophomores, redshirt freshmen, a few true freshmen, and so pretty much the key, the major key, if you want to call it, is going to be doing what they did against Utah and getting some pressure on Eason. We've seen that if you can pressure the guy, he doesn't play his best football under pressure. We saw that against Cal, and so he's going to get another chance to prove that was just a fluke, or we're going to find out if that is if that's the case, right? He's got, like I said, he's got a great set of wide receivers. We know what Washington brings to the table in the secondary. USC's O-line has been doing a pretty decent job of protecting the quarterbacks. Is that going to be the case for Washington? Is this USC D-line going to step up again and take over this game and play a big part in the outcome? We're going to find out. Because obviously we weren't able to get a good gauge on Utah's O-line because they had pretty much played cupcakes for the majority of their season up until last week. But coming into this matchup, it should be very interesting. I'm not sure, USC's defense in the secondary is going to be able to put together the plays they're gonna need to make in order to shut down these wide receivers that Washington has. I know I have a lot of USC friends that aren't gonna like what they're hearing from me talking about them like that, but really it's just a different offense they're gonna be seeing this week, because like I said, Utah is not very heavy in the pass attack, And I think Washington is going to try and take advantage of their matchups with the wide receivers. And as I continue to touch on, we're going to see if the USC D-line is the real deal, and if they can get pressure, if they can get into the face of Jacob Eason. We're going to find out if he's the real deal. I expect this game to come down to the quarterback play, and right now I think Washington has the better of the quarterbacks, and this will be Fink's first true road test of the season, right? And we saw how that went for Caden Slovis. And so Washington is not an easy place to play. We know their stadium gets rocking. But yeah, I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover. I think this will be a good game. I think USC will put themselves in a position to win it. But at this point in time, I think Washington playing at home, I think they're just going to have a better chance of winning on the outsides at the wide receiver positions against their secondaries, respectively. I think Washington wins 31-24. Once again, my final score, USC taking on Washington. Washington wins at home 31-24. With that being said, I have one more match I'm going to be covering today for Week 5, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, stay prepared for the up and downs. Life is like a seesaw. Some say it's a bitch, man. I couldn't agree more. 1 minute you're on top, then you're in the